Welcome back to CASE Documentaries. Make sure to hit subscribe for true crime and other things that you may later regret knowing. Thank you so much to all of my patrons. If your name is on screen right now, then you're a legend. This is truly one of the most infuriating and heartbreaking cases I have ever covered. So this is an additional reminder for viewer discretion. Our love and respect goes out to all those that knew and loved Nina, and all those affected by this dark case. Viewer discretion is advised for this educational documentary. Nina Courtepatte was born on October 3rd, 1991 in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. She was bright and full of life since day one. She was the pride and joy of mother Peacha and father Tim. Nina was the fourth of 6 siblings. Among them were Darcy, Annie, Patrick and Ethan. She was fiercely protective of her younger siblings, making sure they always had someone to play with and feel safe being around. She would dress them up, put makeup on them, and even cook them pancakes at the weekend. Patrick was Nina's older brother, and he was the one that she would really confide in the most. With her long, thick, dark hair and a seemingly unending curiosity, she really was the main source of joy in her family's lives. Nina was said to be a gifted artist. In particular, she had a knack for drawing. She also enjoyed a blossoming interest in creative writing. She completed her early education at Aboriginal Head Start, and this provided her with a sense of belonging and a place in the world. The Courtepatte family had Indigenous roots. Encouraged by her parents to speak out and stand up for herself, Nina always looked for justice in every situation that she encountered. She always defended her peers who were being bullied, and she would tell them that they were beautiful and worthy. Having this strength when she saw something bad happening, and having the ability to stand up for herself was especially important for Nina. In Canada, around 5% of the population is made up of Indigenous people, but shockingly, this group makes up around 25% of homicide victims, an especially sad reality for Nina and her family. Her strong feelings of right and wrong would mean that she would also challenge teachers, refusing to sit down until they admitted their mistakes. When she was 12 years old, she took part in the DARE program, and it seemed that she took the message of abstaining from substances pretty seriously. Her mother even noted one quite funny occasion where Nina saw a stranger smoking next to a no smoking sign, and she then took it upon herself to reprimand them, telling them that they were doing wrong. The Courtepatte family moved to the Dunluce area when Nina was 8 years old, and this marked the start of some new troubling habits for the girl, and these manifested in some bizarre ways. She started hiding outside after dark, something that seemed like a fun and mischievous thing to do. Mother Peacha would get scared, unable to find her daughter, something that she had to try and make Nina fully understand just how serious this could get. However, Nina's pushing of new boundaries would escalate to more unsettling incidents. In one instance, she mistakenly spoke about being violated, perhaps wanting a reaction or attention, both of which she certainly got, but probably not the kind that she was trying to elicit. Her mother and father tried to quash what she had said and explain the potential consequences to their daughter, but they weren't able to do so completely. Nina's words led to involvement from child and family service workers, although no evidence was found to support her claims. And thankfully, nothing of this kind was ever believed to have happened to Nina. And happily, she and her siblings were able to remain under the care of their parents. After the family moved once more to the west end of Edmonton, Nina's behaviour improved and she seemed much more settled. Family meant the world to Nina. She shared a strong connection with her mother, and she taught her the Cree language as they grew closer. Cree is a language that less than 100,000 Indigenous people are able to speak in Canada, so this was a special thing. She was a popular and socially active girl and made friends quite easily, although she did still sometimes test the rules. Mother Peacha highlighted Nina's responsible side too. She noted that she'd always follow through on her commitments, and she'd always call home as expected and come back when she said that she would. Entering her teenage years, Nina decided that she wanted to be famous. She began dreaming about becoming a model or an actress. She let her imagination run wild as she performed scenes and songs for anyone that would watch, and this led her to joining the Boys and Girls Club of Edmonton and acting in their productions for local audiences. Very of the time, Nina also loved American Idol, Canadian Idol, and America's Next Top Model. She wanted to take part in this new craze of reality TV talent shows, and she actually got a little taste of success. Amazingly, in 2004, Nina began to realize one of these dreams. She was crowned the winner of a local modeling competition, and this meant that she was invited to enroll in Chan International's professional modeling program. Who knows what heights Nina would have reached. On March 30th, 2005, Nina wanted to spend a weekend at a friend's house. This was a common activity as the girls had a long-standing and close friendship. However, a few days later, Peacha received a phone call from Nina's best friend KB's mother. She said that the girls had said to her that they were going to stay at the Courtepatte household, and obviously Nina had told Peacha that they were staying at KB's house. It's that classic situation that we have all at least once considered doing while we were younger. It was now that Peacha found out that KB had a little bit of a history. She would run away for several days at a time, and it seemed like the friend's mother couldn't quite seem to get on top of the situation. I'll also note that KB was 15, so 2 years older than Nina. The friend's mother assured Peacha that the girls would likely return in a couple of days. Peacha, though, was deeply worried. She reached out to local organisations that may be able to help. However, she didn't want to involve the police. She was concerned of their prior experiences with child and family services, that is, following Nina's false allegations 5 years prior. So the concerned mother felt that her hands were kind of tied, and that she simply had to trust that Nina was as responsible as she hoped that she was. Despite the growing concern, Peacha continued to wait for her daughter's return. However, 2 days later, she received some devastating news. The body of a girl around Nina's age was found at the Edmonton Springs golf course. Peacha understandably immediately contacted the police. The police then asked the mother some potentially hurtful questions. They asked if her daughter was an escort. They asked if she drank alcohol or took substances, and if she had a history of running away. As we know, these seem like things that Nina would oppose. There is some belief out there that these specific questions are asked due to Nina and Peacha's status as Indigenous people. Police then went on to ask the mother for a picture of Nina, hopefully to eliminate her from the investigation. However, the following day, Nina received news that would shatter her world. Authorities believed that the girl was indeed Nina, and sadly, Peacha confirmed her daughter's identity. But how could this have happened? Nina went for a sleepover at a friend's house, and now this. She was found over 30 miles away. It just didn't make sense. 2 days prior to Nina meeting her terrible end, a group of 5 people were ready to embark on a dark mission. These 5 were made up of Joseph LeBoucan, age 19, Michael Briscoe, age 34, Stephanie Bird, age 17, Michael Williams, age 17, and an unnamed 16-year-old referred to only as Buffy. Everyone in this group is a key figure for one reason or another, but let's talk about Joseph, as he had some level of leadership in the group. At 19, it seems clear that he had a troubled life. At 13 years old, Joseph fled his home after issues with his stepfather. This meant that at just 13, Joseph fled from British Columbia to Edmonton, and from what I can tell, he undertook this journey of over 700 miles alone. What those exact issues with the stepfather were, we don't know, but we can kind of imagine it could be a few things, and all of them would be pretty awful. When Joseph was around 17, he started dating Stephanie Bird, and after dating for around a year, Joseph once more vanished into thin air, and apparently on this occasion he actually fled back to British Columbia. Something wasn't right in his life, or with him as a person. And then, just a few days before the events in his case unfolded, Joseph was driven back to Edmonton by some friends. His reason for returning was to sign some documents to gain access to a payout for some kind of personal injury case that he was a part of. However, in doing so, they unwittingly delivered him to a group of people that, when combined, would be capable of unimaginable acts. After his friends left him to drive home, Joseph discovered that he had lost his wallet, but he had suspicions that it had been stolen. Either way, he was now stranded in Edmonton, but one familiar place to him in town was the mall. It was an old haunt of his, so that's where he headed. At the mall, Joseph by chance saw his ex-girlfriend Stephanie. The two had dated around 18 months prior to this, but then split, as I said, when Joseph vanished. So stranded with no money and no ID, Joseph now begged Stephanie for help. He needed somewhere to stay, or he would be homeless and penniless. By this time, Stephanie had moved on from Joseph and was now dating Michael Briscoe. That's right, 34-year-old Michael Briscoe was dating 17-year-old Stephanie Bird. And I think that kind of paints the picture of this group. They were misfits and people acting outside of society's norms and of the law. And as we go on, we'll discover just how far outside they truly were. Stephanie introduced Briscoe to Joseph, and Briscoe then allowed him to stay in their room at the Windmill Hotel. In a situation that should probably be awkward, they immediately got on. It seemed they were drawn together by something incredibly dark within both of them. Just a few days after meeting on April the 1st, several of the group were involved in a really awful crime. One where they would pick up a young woman named Ellie Mae Meyer. They would badly injure her, so badly in fact that she would lose the tip of her finger and was allegedly coughing up red vital fluids before they ended her time on this earth. She was left dumped by the side of the road and wouldn't be found for 1 whole month. Ellie's case really is a shocking one, and I will be covering it on the channel. So please understand, I'm not minimizing what happened here at all. I just want to keep this documentary dedicated to Nina as much as possible. But now you get an idea of just how depraved this group was. So on April the 2nd, one day after Ellie met her end, group members Joseph and Buffy were in Briscoe and Stephanie's motel room. This is where they lived full-time in lieu of a house or apartment, and it was here that Joseph would show Buffy the tip of Ellie's finger. He was bizarrely storing it between 2 slices of bread and keeping it in the freezer, a sick trophy from the previous day's events. Joseph openly admitted that what he did to Ellie had really given him an appetite for destruction. He said that the rush was so great that he wanted to kill again. Joseph, at just 19 years old, was somehow said to be the ringleader, even influencing Michael Briscoe, almost twice his age. The next day, Buffy was hanging out at the mall, something she often did. 16-year-old Buffy was said to have substance issues, and her life was not going well. She met up with Michael Williams as planned. The two of them had been going out for around 2 months. Williams too had substance issues and was already high when they met at the mall. The couple went to grab some food at a Humpty's restaurant to the north of the mall. While they were there, they ran into none other than Michael Briscoe, Joseph LeBoucan and Stephanie Bird. The two groups sat on adjoining tables and began to chat. The dynamics of this group were pretty bizarre. Stephanie also had substance issues which Briscoe claimed to be helping her with. He wouldn't let her out of his sight, allegedly to stop her from using. But it has also been claimed that the real reason is that he was paranoid that she would cheat. So he was on her 24/7. Again, remember the age gap here. It's not what I'd call a healthy situation. Pretty much the whole group were either strung out or under the influence. And as you can probably imagine, they had no intention of paying for their food. So instead of paying, they just ran out the door to Michael Briscoe's 1991 Ford Tempo. Self-proclaimed mall rats, they didn't go far, but instead just circled the mall, before then going back inside where they would meet a man named Jay Schamberg. With no intentions of doing anything positive or productive, they all jumped back into the Ford Tempo. They then cruised around town, generally fooling about. However, things took a dark turn when Joseph and Michael Williams started talking about killing. They asked Buffy if she wanted to come along while they killed someone that night. Buffy claims that she thought they were joking, that everyone did. Jay was then dropped off and the group drove back to the motel. The thoughts of murder were still present in Joseph and Williams' heads. Whilst in the room, they picked up some weapons. The group then once more headed back to the mall. Some of them smoked a mild illicit substance, and then once more they went back out for a drive before ending up back at the mall. By this time, Joseph, Briscoe and Stephanie had formed a dark plan. They would go back into the mall, searching for a victim. Joseph saw a group of teens on the edge of the food court near an arcade. At that moment, he saw his victim. He referred to them as the chosen one. However, he wouldn't yet share who the person was with Briscoe or Stephanie. Joseph and Stephanie walked over to the group and started talking to them. None of them could have had the slightest idea of how much danger they were in. One of the people in the group was KB, Nina's best friend. KB actually knew Stephanie a little and they had met once or twice. So Joseph and Stephanie invited KB to a bush party that was happening later that night, and they said that she should bring her friend with her too, her friend being Nina Courtepatte. The two elder teens sold this party as being where the cool kids would be. There would be alcohol and substances and hundreds of people would be there. So KB and Nina saw this as a chance to experience something new, a window into what grown-up teens actually did. They agreed to meet back at the mall later, where they would then travel together to the party. Joseph, Briscoe and Stephanie went back to Williams and Buffy at the car. Joseph said the harrowing words, "We found someone." And indeed the group did return to the mall to pick up KB and Nina. The time was now 12:27 AM on April the 3rd, the day that we know to be Nina's last. Stephanie led the girls to the Ford Tempo, a car that was so overloaded that Nina had to sit on Joseph's lap. The talk in the car was excitable. They were all discussing how cool the party was going to be, how many people were going to be there, and exactly what they were going to get up to. Joseph promised Nina that he would protect her at the party and that she was safe. It's said that both Nina and KB kissed Joseph on this car ride. Just a reminder, Joseph is 19, KB is 15, and Nina is 13. They eventually arrived at their destination after a journey of around 30 miles. When the girls got out of the car, they didn't see hundreds of people, they didn't hear music, and they didn't smell smoke and alcohol. Instead, they were met with an eerie silence. Meanwhile, Joseph, Briscoe and Williams were picking out their weapons from the trunk of the car. These included a wrench, a sledgehammer and a pair of pliers. They then ran to catch up with the girls. The group walked seemingly aimlessly through wooded areas over gravel, grass and dirt. During this time, KB and Nina were getting suspicious that there wasn't actually a party. However, they were reassured repeatedly by Joseph that the other attendees were simply waiting for their arrival, and once they got there, the party would really start up. They even started to shout out into the darkness, asking where the party was, and clearly they got no response. Buffy started talking to Nina about sacrifices and rituals. She had some kind of obsession with vampires, hence the name Buffy, and it seems that her substance misuse wasn't helping her delusions. This was the first hint of something really dark happening. Joseph then started talking about bringing people back from the dead, and everything was getting weird. Suddenly, Stephanie pulled out a 2-foot wrench. She swung it viciously, striking Nina in the back so hard she almost fell to the ground. Instead, she stumbled and ran to Joseph for protection, but that's not what she got. He instead whispered something into her ear, something which caused her to say, "No, don't do this." We can only imagine the sinking moment of realization that there was no party, that they were stranded in the middle of nowhere, that nobody knew where the girls were, and there was nobody there to help. Nina and KB had been betrayed. Joseph ordered Nina to remove her clothing and she refused, saying, "Why are you doing this?" She didn't get an answer. Instead, the three males stripped her lower half and pinned her to the ground. Buffy said to Nina, "You're supposed to die." Joseph then violated her in the worst way possible. Stephanie allegedly sat by a traumatized KB, strangely comforting her and giving her William's jacket. Joseph then told Briscoe and Stephanie to take KB back to the car, and there they sat, engine running, heating on, whilst Nina suffered in an unimaginable way outside in the cold. Williams then took his turn in violating Nina, before Buffy handed her back her clothes and told her to get dressed. Joseph then told Nina that they were going to beat her to death, and heartbreakingly, Nina replied, "No, no. Make it fast so it doesn't hurt." But they didn't listen to her request. What happened next was absolutely horrific. I can't really begin to go into it on this platform. but the information is out there. Nina's time on this earth was tragically ended. The group then left, travelling back to the motel, and there they stayed along with KB for 3 days. During this time, KB didn't know the fate that her best friend had met. The group told her that they had simply beaten up Nina and told her to run home, but as we know, this was far from the truth. The group's erratic behaviour only incriminated them further following Nina's attack. Michael Williams met up with a friend while still covered in red vital fluids, and he even confessed to them about the murder. Buffy washed a set of sharp implements used in the attack in a washroom in front of a friend. Joseph once more fled town, and the group seemed to be falling apart. When KB was finally set free, she saw news coverage of Nina's demise. She now knew the full extent of what had happened to her best friend. She went to the police, sharing everything she knew from that fateful day and night. The group was subsequently arrested, and like rats in a bag, they all turned on one another. No two stories totally matched. Some claimed to be innocent of some crimes, and they blamed each other for others. Michael Williams, known among his friends as Pyro, admitted to his crimes. This included an attempt to set fire to Nina's jeans before fleeing the scene. During the trial, the judge noted that Williams struggles with mental health problems, and that it might take decades before he experiences any sense of remorse for his actions. Courtroom revelations also shed light on Williams' troubled life, painting a picture of a troubled and destructive individual who claimed to have faced physical attacks and violations. His encounters with psychologists began at the tender age of 4. Troubling behaviour continued to manifest as he made lethal threats in the 2nd grade, and by the age of 12 he had a big collection of sharp implements. All of this together resulted in his removal from his mother's care and placement into social services custody. Despite the defence advocating for Williams to be sentenced as a youth, meaning he could only get a maximum sentence of 10 years, the judge ruled to try him as an adult for first-degree murder. This decision automatically sentenced him to life in prison, with no chance of parole for at least a decade. Stephanie Bird was convicted of manslaughter, of kidnapping, along with aggravated assault, and received a 12-year sentence. But in December of 2009, the Supreme Court of Canada upgraded that conviction to first-degree murder after ruling that the evidence at trial could not support a defence of abandonment, and that no other defence arises on the facts. However, her lawyers said that Bird was prepared to accept a longer prison term. The lawyers said that Bird's primary concern wasn't the duration of her imprisonment, but rather the immense guilt she feels and the struggle to forgive herself for her involvement and her assistance to those responsible for the crime. Typically, first-degree murder convictions entail a life sentence, one without parole eligibility for 25 years. However, as Stephanie was initially a young offender and later sentenced as an adult, she became eligible for a life sentence with no chance of parole for at least 10 years. Buffy was the youngest of the convicted individuals. If she had been sentenced as an adult for her convictions of second-degree murder and aggravated violations, she would have received a life sentence with no chance of parole for 7 years, similar to the other minors involved in this crime. In 2009, though, she was sentenced to 4 years in custody, followed by an additional 3 years of supervised probation, which officially ended on November 9th, 2016. She was 27 years old when she appeared in an Edmonton courtroom for the last time in 2016. Michael Briscoe escaped a conviction for the murder of Ellie Mae Myers. He denied any involvement other than driving the car. However, in regard to Nina's case, Briscoe was sentenced to life with no possibility of parole for 25 years. This was for first-degree murder, for the violations, and kidnapping. During his trial in 2007, witnesses testified that Joseph was the ringleader in the scheme to manipulate Nina into leaving the mall with them. However, in his own testimony, Joseph claimed he was unaware of the true nature of the gathering, and he insisted that he entered a state of shock when Nina was attacked by Stephanie. He asserted that he never harmed her. The DNA evidence, however, said differently. Joseph was given a sentence of 25 years without the chance of parole, a sentence which was repeated for his role in Ellie Mae Myers' case too. The following year he attempted to appeal, but his conviction was upheld. It's also important to talk about the impact of the crime left on the victim's family. In the aftermath of daughter Nina's murder, Peacha said she was completely alone. Throughout the legal proceedings, she found herself alone, attending all 4 trials consistently, receiving limited support from family and friends. Peacha's longing for support and understanding led her to aspire to help other families sadly facing similar tragedies. She found that people didn't know how to talk to her, and she yearned for someone to talk to during her lonely and distressing times. She believed that victim services often lack the appropriate strategies to help families affected by murder, leaving them to seek their own sources of support. Peacha advocated for more accessible and centralized information to assist families like hers, families looking for guidance and support, and how to navigate dealing with law enforcement and the legal process. Sadly, in 2015, Peacha passed away after a battle with cancer. This is one of the hardest cases that we've looked at here at Dark Case Documentaries. But it's important that people like Nina, like Ellie, like Peacha, like KB aren't forgotten. So thank you for watching. Do you think the punishments fit the crimes here? What do you think can be done to avoid something like this happening again in the future? Please do let me know down in the comments. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.